Nothing is better than winning your fantasy championship, except maybe doing it with guys that nobody expects. Today, we have 6 hidden gems for your fantasy football playoffs. And like I said, we have 6 players for you today. We actually have 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, and 2 tight ends. Didn't even try to do that, but I guess we're going to give you the full array, the full flavor of our hidden playoff gems. And I do want to just say before we get into this and acknowledge Tyler and I are Vikings fans, so this might be a little sad boy hours as we kind of mourn the awful weekend that we just had to watch football as 9 didn't quite show up in the way we wanted. Hopefully it gets better from here on out, but we just wanted to preface that if we're a little down on some guys moving forward, it's because of our own biases of what happened this last weekend. But Ty, you're talking about Devin Neal, and it's interesting because Alvin Kamara might miss some time. Obviously, Taysom Hill factored in a little bit after he was out, but Devin Neal got receiving work. So what's the outlook for Devin Neal? And is it this is only if Alvin Kamara is out, or is it even if Alvin Kamara is out?
I feel like that's the right place to start. I feel like it is only when Alvin Kamara is out. They are paying him a ton of money. Kamara is still one of the top playmakers on that team. Granted, that's not saying a whole lot because it's Chris Olave and it's Alvin Kamara and then it's everyone else. Mm-hmm. But in the meantime, like Devin Neal kind of becomes this new like Rachaad White in some ways, where he's the rushing work probably isn't going to be super great against 7 for 18 against Atlanta after what Atlanta was kind of giving up to running backs in previous weeks. Isn't great. But I feel like the receiving work is going to give Devin Neal some kind of floor, or at least some kind of upside here in the upcoming weeks with Alvin Kamara out of action. So let's dive into Alvin Kamara's injury. He has an MCL sprain, which is usually a 2-week injury. Experts will say it's anywhere between a 1-week to 4-week injury. Teams usually will try to rush their running backs back after just 1 week with these kind of injuries. I'm going to be honest. I don't think the Saints have any reason to try to rush Alvin Kamara back unless you're trying to set a tone or whatever, going into the next year. But I feel like this is kind of a golden opportunity to kind of just see what you got, right? You've got Tyler Shuck under center. You've got Devin Neal behind him. You're just kind of seeing what you got for the rest of the way, especially when you're so far out of the playoffs at this point. So it is Devin Neal's backfield until further notice. You brought up Taysom Hill. Yes, he's still going to factor in. He'll probably take away some short yardage stuff. He'll take away some goal line carries. But other than that, I do think this is all Devin Neal. And you look at the upcoming schedule, you got Miami, you got Tampa Bay, you got Carolina, you got the Jets, and you got the Titans. They're all in the top half of the league in fantasy points allowed to running backs. Yeah, some of them are playing better, but I do think the Saints just are going to play their game. It's not exactly they don't have the luxury of just going, well, we're chasing points, we need to throw the ball. Like they kind of have to kind of play their own game here. So yes, this all changes when Alvin Kamara returns, but I'm willing to take the chance on Neal in the meantime. And maybe it's not the rest of the season hidden playoff gem that you're looking for, but maybe it's just the buffer that you need for the next week or two to give you some fantasy points while you're getting some guys to recover, or you just don't like some matchups for some fringe guys that you have on your roster right now.
Definitely. He's going to put in some work, right? He's going to get touches here and there. We've seen it 46, 39, 35% snap shares before the bye. Obviously comes in, we get 7 carries, 7 targets. I think the receiving work, like you said, is going to be there. Devon Vele, who they paid a 4th-round pick for, just isn't it. They traded away Rashid Shaheed. It's just Chris Olave. So they need somebody else in the passing game. And if Kamara's not there, Neal can factor in. Like you said, it'll be nice because you'll know if Kamara is going to be in the game or not with Neal, right? It's not one of those that's kind of like Sean Tucker and Rachaad White right now, where you're throwing them in here. Hopefully we can trust Devin Neal, and Devin Neal's going to get the receiving work. It's never going to be huge. It's never going to be, hey, he scored me 40 points, but he could be a double-digit half PPR guy just based off the receiving work that he's going to get, which is, for a guy you're picking up off waivers right now, is definitely something that's nice to have. Before we move it to my guy, we just want to remind you, we're going to continue to put out fantasy football content the rest of the year. We only have two episodes a week coming up with Thanksgiving this week, and then moving forward into December, we're gonna tone it back a little bit to 2 episodes. So we're not gonna stop. We're not gonna quit on you. We're just gonna make sure that the content that you're getting is the most relevant for winning a fantasy championship, because that's all that matters. So make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn on those notifications. Ty, I'm going to be honest. I feel like my guy's more exciting than the guy you just talked about. I know Devin Neal is a little exciting, but he is on the Saints right now. And so that's a loss to begin with. But Jayden Higgins, 7+ targets in 4 of his last 5 games. He is wide receiver 19 in targets over the last 5 weeks. He hasn't necessarily gotten the yards to come along with yet. Obviously, Davis Mills has been in, so that factors in, but 3 touchdowns in that time frame too. So he's a guy who is starting to produce, who's starting to see the field more. 82, 48, 57, 61% snaps in his last 5 or his last 4. 9 targets this last week against Buffalo. Obviously, only 4 catches for 38 yards. But if we're talking about a rookie wide receiver performing over the back half of the season, and this is a guy, Ty, that both of us liked coming into the year in Jayden Higgins. I thought the landing spot's pretty good. You're playing opposite of Nico Collins. Now it's time, hey, are we going to see that second half of the year rookie bump? And I think we're already starting to see it. It's just once the yards come back, once CJ Stroud comes back, it's not an ideal schedule, I'll admit. Indy, at Kansas City, not exactly fantastic. At the Chargers championship weekend, plays Arizona and Vegas. But I think the good part for him is Nico is going to always draw that cornerback one. Nico is always going to take that pressure off of him. So as long as he's going to continue to get the volume, he should be open. He should continue to see those red zone targets.
You are right. It is more fun to talk about better offenses than the Saints. And look, I was a big Jayden Higgins guy during the draft. So it's been good to see him kind of like emerge a little bit in this offense. Obviously, he's not going to emerge as wide receiver 1 over Nico Collins, but Higgins has kind of emerged as not only wide receiver 2, but it's kind of the number 2 passing option here. Yes, it's been Davis Mills, so maybe things change when CJ Stroud comes back. But you go back to week 8 until now, Jayden Higgins is getting a target on 26% of his routes. Ooh. That's 21st of all receivers with at least 50 routes. Like Jayden Higgins is getting looks. So you may not be, wowed by 7, 8, 9 targets, but they are clearly willing to let Jayden Higgins eat a little bit here, and finding the end zone certainly helps. So I don't want to say that the schedule doesn't matter, but Houston can't really run the ball right now. Woody Marks is doing his best job. So if there's any way that Houston's going to try to compete for the rest of the year, it's going to be through the air. And that just gives so much opportunity to a guy like Jayden Higgins, who has been coming through so far, to continue some of these performances. So I love the fact that Jayden Higgins is starting to kind of break out a little bit. It'll be interesting to see where we rank him week to week, right, with matchup and whoever the quarterback is. But just looking at the second half of the year rookie breakout, like Jayden Higgins is kind of obviously not to like the top 10 levels that you would want from a rookie, but like if Jayden Higgins is going to give you some
one, yeah, I think so too. And I think especially this next week, if you're a little hesitant, I'd watch what happens this next week against Indy. Indy's been playing pretty good against the pass. Obviously, they had a meltdown in the fourth quarter and overtime against Kansas City, allowing Rashee Rice to kind of do whatever he wanted. But if Jayden Higgins is still getting 7, 8, 9 targets, he's a guy that, yeah, for sure, I think you could lock him in into the flex moving forward, because it should only continue to get better. But Ty, you're going to keep us on this rookie train, and I know Luther Burden hasn't quite had the volume that Jayden Higgins has, but it's been very exciting at times when you see him with the ball in his hands. And obviously Ben Johnson is a fun play caller. Bears are overperforming right now. So is that kind of the formula for Luther Burden, or what should people be taking notice of Luther Burden for?
So here's what we need to know about Luther Burden. Like you said, the volume hasn't exactly been there, so that we're not getting a breakout just yet. But I think the best way to describe it is that Luther Burden is primed to break out here. And it won't surprise me based on the latest kind of trends in usage and playtime for Luther Burden if he outproduces DJ Moore by year's end. So it's kind of Rome Odunze and then Luther Burden. Now, I make that as kind of a sweeping statement or a general kind of consensus statement. It's really hard to tell right now who's going to kind of have the good games between Rome Odunze, DJ Moore, and even the guy that you're going to talk about next, and Luther Burden himself. But here's what we need to know for Luther Burden moving forward. He has officially taken over, I should say, the slot wide receiver role from Olamide Zaccheaus. Luther Burden is officially the wide receiver 3 in this offense. He has run around on 60% of Caleb's dropbacks the last 2 weeks. And that may not sound like a lot again, but you take a look at all the games before that, just 28%. There has been a shift in trying to get Luther Burden on the field on passing situations and trying to get him the ball, not to the levels of Jayden Higgins, but you see a carry for 15 yards. You see 5 targets in back-to-back games. They are trying to get Luther Burden more involved in this offense. Burden in these last 2 weeks has been targeted on 24% of those routes. That's second highest on the team. The upcoming schedule, yes, is daunting. You got Philly, you got Green Bay, you got Cleveland, and then you get Green Bay again. But I feel like all 4 of those games, you're going to need points. And that gives Luther Burden an opportunity to shine based on the latest usage and utilization over the last 2 weeks. So I feel like we're kind of entering the last days before the Luther Burden price just jumps up substantially. If he's available on waivers right now, he is free. There's nothing costing you to at least stash him right now before the volume hits. Because again, when the volume hits, Luther Burden's value goes up and to the right. So I love the fact that Luther Burden, I shouldn't say I love. I have not enjoyed the fact that it has taken this long for Luther Burden to really get going, but the light is at the end of the tunnel and it can absolutely get going this week.
I'm going to continue this conversation talking about my player, and then we'll come back and have a conversation about the 2 of them together, because I feel like that's the best way to talk about this rather than me saying, oh, and then the guy I'm going to talk about, right? We can say, you're going to put the clues together. So we'll just have the Colston Loveland conversation, and then we'll talk about them together, because obviously it's going to be, can you have both these guys break out? Is it only going to be one? How's that going to work? Colston Loveland, wide receiver 3 tight end 3 over the last 5 weeks, tight end 5 in points per game. So he's played an extra game than everybody else. Obviously helps that he had that spike week in week 9 against Cincinnati, where he had 7 targets, 6 catches, 118 yards, and 2 touchdowns. But what I really like, what I'm seeing from Colston Loveland is snap count has been up since week 7. He's played 67, 81, 81, 62, 75, and 65% of snaps, even out snapping Cole Kmet this last week. So again, similar to Luther Burden, that is promising. That's what you want to see moving forward. He has 25 targets over the last 5 games. He's seen 38 technically plus yards, 40 plus yards in each of his last 4, has 3 touchdowns over the stretch. But what I really like the most for Colston Loveland is his yards per reception over his last 5 are 12.7, 19.7, 13.8, 13.3, and 12.3. They're using him down the field. They're getting him in space too. They're letting him run after catch, using him down the field a bit more. He is a weapon down there. He's currently the tight end 2 on the week with only 12.9 half PPR points, which is just insane. It shows you kind of where the tight end landscape is. And I think that's the bigger part of the conversation too, is the tight end landscape hasn't exactly been overly consistent as of late. There's not a lot of guys who are putting up these spike weeks. And because we know that's in the range of outcomes for Colston Loveland, if I'm getting a guy who's getting me 7, 8 half PPR points every single week, and I know that a 25-point game could happen, that's the kind of guy I want to roll out. Now, Ty, the question is, and the question that people who are listening to, we're watching I got the San Francisco game going on too. Brock Purdy just threw his third interception. I'm sorry, that just threw me off.
Bring in Mac Jones. Bring in Mac Jones.
Goodness.
Oh,
don't. Vikings need him next year as that vet in there. We don't want to drive the price up. Keep the price low on Mac Jones.
We'll give a fifth for Brock Purdy. Then you guys can take JJ McCarthy then.
Well, we don't want the contract. So anyway, the question people are asking is, can we have both of these guys break out? Can Luther Burden and Colston Loveland both break out? Is it going to just make it more consistent? How do you see this picture moving forward?
So let me start with where I see things right now. I feel like Chicago is playing a style of ball that just says we're going to take advantage of whatever defense is giving us and win by doing it like that. They're not trying to make one guy the alpha and everyone like a hierarchy. They're not trying to do it like that. So when I look at like Colston Loveland and his role in this offense right now, right, with Luther Burden getting more playing time, with DJ Moore, Roma Dunze, Cole Kmet still even being in the mix, it feels like Loveland is pops up in the most strategic moments, in the most like Colston Loveland. I want to say like he's a gap filler in the sense that like when it's time to get the ball to somebody else other than a receiver or the run game, it's Colston Loveland, which that's football. But like Colston Loveland isn't exactly going to be a volume hog. He's not going to be one of the top volume getters. But I do think that there's room for Colston Loveland to keep this trend going here where, yeah, it's not going to be the flashiest stat lines. Maybe you get the Cincinnati game every once in a while, but that's such a one-off game, in my opinion, with how that game kind of played out. So I see a game similar to Pittsburgh, right? 4 for 50 and a score. So back to your question of just like, can both Luther Burden and Colston Loveland break out? Yes, but I don't think it's going to be like top 10 levels at their position, because to do all of that, that means that Chicago's offense gets to the top of the league in a ton of different metrics that I just don't see happening. But again, there's value in a breakout from being that kind of mid-teens tight end where you're like, man, I'm in a pinch and I'll throw him in, versus I'm comfortable throwing him in. If Loveland makes that jump from fringe to, yeah, I can put him into my lineup and have some confidence behind it, that's a breakout in my opinion. Same with Luther Burden, from pretty much nothing to being in your wide receiver 3 conversation and thoughts. That's a breakout in my opinion. Not to the league winning levels, but again, enough to make you consider him in your lineup. So I see that for both, but at the same time, that's going to come at the detriment of something else. That's going to come at the detriment of DJ Moore, and Roma Dunze is probably going to take a hit in his volume then as well.
Yeah, I mean, they used a top 10 pick on Colston Loveland. They used their next pick on Luther Burden. These are the first 2 draft picks of the Ben Johnson era. He's going to show, hey, I got these guys for a reason. I'm going to utilize them. And you look at Colston Loveland, you might go, that the receptions just aren't very good. And I just want to remind you how low the tight end landscape is right now. Over the last 5 weeks, can you guess how many tight ends are averaging over or 5 receptions or more in a game over the last 5 weeks? 5 receptions. That's a number. Just give people a reference. That's a pace of 85 targets over 17 games, or 85 receptions over 17 games. So like for wide receivers, that's awesome. But for tight ends, like that's kind of the.
I was about to like way overshoot and say like 8 or 9, but the way that you're making it sounds like it's probably like 3 or 4.
So it's 5. It's Trey McBride, Brock Bowers, George Kittle, Travis Kelce, and Tyler Warren. Everybody else is averaging over 5 receptions per game or less. So Colston Loveland being at averaging 4 receptions a game over his last 5 is right where you want to be. That's a guy that I believe is startable. In the same time frame, Jake Ferguson has 14 catches for 126 yards over his last 4 games. Right? There really just aren't consistent tight ends. So that's why I believe he's a starter. Luther Burden, I think, is a guy that they are designing plays for. He's a guy you want to get the ball in his hands. So I feel like he's pretty safe as well. And like you said, he's free pretty much everywhere. Colston Loveland probably is being rostered. You might have to, make a trade, or he's on your bench. In 12-man leagues, you can get Luther Burden for sure off the waiver wire, or just send your last bench guy to go get him, essentially, is kind of where he's at. So I would agree with both. I think they both can perform, and I don't think that one's going to truly be at the detriment of the other. I think it's going to be the detriment of the guys ahead of them.
Correct. Last thing here. The last thing, or the three things that you want to look for in a tight end, right? Like the tight end calling cards that we talked about during the draft process back in the summer. You look for the volume guys, so the high usage guys. So that's your Trey McBrides of the world. You look for the red zone threats that can just ride touchdowns. That's the Mark Andrews of the world. That's the Dalton Kincaids of the world now for this year. Then you look at for yards after the catch guys, your George Kittles. Since week 8, Colston Loveland has the fourth most yards after the catch at the tight end position. So it's, you may not be wowed by the volume, like you said, but he's making big plays with the volume that he's getting. So even just the slightest uptick in work to maybe getting 5 catches a game, that could make all the difference in the world. Like you said, with the tight end landscape as kind of dire and as it's pretty bad as it is right now.
Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Underdog, where you can get into the game this season playing Pick'em. It's extremely simple. Just pick higher or lower on 2 or more of your favorite players. For example, I'll pick the highers on Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, and Xavier Worthy. If I played $10 and got all 3 of them right, I would win $60 just by watching football. And that's the beauty of Pick'em. You can track your picks and your wins while you enjoy the game. Now, if you're not on Underdog yet, scan the QR code on your screen or use our code FELLAS when you sign up, because new customers will get $50 in bonus funds when you play your first $5 on the app. Plus, Underdog will give you a free pick to use in your first entry. Again, that's code FELLAS over on Underdog. Now let's get you back to the rest of the show.
And we're back. Ty, you get to talk about your guy now, Brenton Strange. I know it was fun for a little, and then obviously got hurt, and he's back with the vengeance. We had a dynasty trade that has ended up until now been the most pointless trade that we've ever had, where Ty sent me Terry McLaurin, and I sent him Brenton Strange and Isaac Tesla, and Tesla doesn't see the field anymore. And Brenton Strange and Terry McLaurin both got hurt that next week. So this was the first week that anybody could even use one of the guys in our trade after 6 weeks. So Ty, why don't you give us the pro Brenton Strange case moving forward?
Well, let me just say it like this. Brenton Strange is the best pass catcher on the Jaguars at this point in the year. I say that just because I know that Cam, you are the
you don't believe
guy.
That.
I definitely
Travis
don't believe
Etienne's on that team.
Bashal Tutin's on that team. Excuse you, sir.
Yeah, a great breakout week this week for Bashal.
Totally. Hey, let's just say the Bashal Tutin shares are struggling at this point.
They're crying today.
They're crying. So before Brenton Strange's injury and before his return this past week, he was the tight end 14 in usage. He was a borderline starter before he got hurt. Now, the upcoming schedule for Jacksonville, you get Tennessee, you get Indy, you get the Jets, Broncos, and Colts again in week 17. Tennessee and the Jets leave the middle part of the field open among the most in the league, which is great because Brenton Strange absolutely feasts in the middle of the field. He has, I looked this up earlier, it's about 60% of his yards come from the middle part of the field. That plays into Brenton Strange's favor. But then this is what really sold me at Brenton Strange. Denver plays a ton of man. Indy, after trading for Sauce Gardner, play a ton of man as well. They play it at the 3rd highest rate since trading for Sauce. Guess who leads the team in target rate against man coverage?
I'm going to assume it's Brenton Strange.
It's Brenton Strange, and it's by good. You're real smart. It's by a huge margin. The next closest is Parker Washington at 22%.
Jeez.
You ready for this one though? This is just like the dagger in the heart for you. It's double Brian Thomas Jr.
I don't even want to hear
it. You won't do bad. You just did. So the reason why I bring up Brenton Strange, the reason why we talk about 2 tight ends in this episode, because we really don't like talking about tight ends. They're just kind of the last, they're the position that just doesn't get the most shine because we really don't care. But like you said, with the tight end landscape as it is right now, and you have the Sam Laporta injury. So if you're a Sam Laporta manager, or you have been riding with Kyle Pitts and Hunter Henry, David Njoku, and you've looked for solutions, maybe you're kind of out of the race at this point, or like you've been streaming the position because you had Tucker Kraft and now he's out for the year. If Brenton Strange is available, he is going to be the guy that you want on your team the rest of the year to give you some kind of solution at the tight end position. I believe that Brenton Strange is not a streamer, is not a streaming option for the rest of the year. The last game against Arizona, 5 for 93 in his first game back. Like, that should tell you how much Brenton Strange means to this offense. So it's not exactly a sexy name, but guess what? None of these guys have really been the sexiest names. These guys are just kind of flying under the radar right now. And these are probably the last days that you have to add them to your team to give you one last like kind of push into the playoffs, and then make a push, because again, schedules and matchups kind of lead us to believe that they can be more than just bench fillers or depth pieces on your team.
Yeah, he's essentially, to me, a Juwan Johnson slight plus, right? I don't think he's like head and shoulders ahead of where Juwan Johnson is.
What that is the wild Jawan Jennings slight plus.
Juwan Johnson. Juwan Johnson.
Sorry, Johnson.
Who is currently the tight end 8 right now. So that's why I think he's probably a top 7 tight end rest of the season. That's what I'm essentially trying to say. I don't think he's all of a sudden in this Trey McBride, Brock Bowers, Tyler Warren tier. I don't even necessarily think he's in the Travis Kelce tier the way Kelsey's been playing the last couple of weeks. But I think he's slightly below that. And honestly, where tight ends are at, with Laporta out for the rest of the season, Jake Ferguson struggling since CD's been back, that's a guy you have to start. Like, there are no ifs, ands, or buts about that one. That is a guy who needs to be in your starting lineup. So I would agree with you on Brenton Strange. I think he's a safer option than Colston Loveland moving forward. I think he's probably one of the safest options outside of those 5 guys that I had mentioned who had more than 5 receptions a game, just because of where he's at. So I can't agree. Around the world Gadsden, I think we have to say Ty is up there as well.
Can I just say, I feel like if we were to do like,
I couldn't find it. Oh no, it's looping.
And you're about to play the Bill drop too.
Oh my goodness, we're all
some poor hosting skills.
We are all over.
Well, actually, that's kind of funny. Maybe I should just let you transition, because we're not talking about Bill, but we are talking about his teammate.
That's true. No, we're not talking about Bill. We're talking about Chris Rodriguez. You are right, Ty, because he has taken over. Bill is no more. Chris, thank you for the transitioning in that for me as well. I'm all over the place on my hosting skills. I'm falling apart. We don't have our faithful leader, Lucas, with us today, so I have no idea what's going on at all. But Chris Rodriguez came out and he had 15 carries, 79 rushing yards. Obviously, it was against Miami, so take it with a grain of salt. But he dominated the rushing, the running back rushing numbers. He also 45% of snaps compared to 25% for Jeremy McNichols and 27% for Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. And I think he's going to be the guy moving forward. They tried with Bill for as long as they possibly could, and essentially went, this just isn't working for us. On top of that, it's seeming like they're trying to work Jayden Daniels back. I'm not 100% sure why you're rushing him back when you're 3-8, why you're trying to get him back on the field after what was one of the most disgusting injuries we've seen. Luckily, it was just, luckily it was only a dislocation to the elbow, and it wasn't anything, non-throwing elbow, and wasn't anything more serious. But Chris Rodriguez has 12, 6, and 15 carries over the last 3 games. And what really gets me excited, which the reason that I think you can start him is the schedule. They play Denver. What can't you do against Denver? You can't throw the ball, especially if you have Marcus Mariota throwing the ball. Minnesota, they just let Emmanuel Wilson. I mean, it wasn't the most efficient day, but he did just run up the middle, and it's not like their offense is putting up points. They play the Giants, who can't stop anyone, Philly, and Dallas. So a lot of teams you can run the ball on moving forward for Chris Rodriguez. And I think he's a guy that if you're desperate at that running back position, I think you can throw him in and be expecting in half PPR leagues between 8 and 12 fantasy points a game, which I know isn't sexy by any means. But if your other options like Tyjae Spears right now, 8 to 12 half PPR fantasy points a game sounds pretty stinking good. So I'm again not similar to Devin Neal. I don't think he's going to be like a winner by any means. I don't think he's going to go out and just dominate and give you 25 points here and there. But I think he's a guy that you need a player that you can plug in and get you points. I think Chris Rodriguez is going to be that guy over the back half of the season.
So I'll say this: Chris Rodriguez and Devin Neal are the epitome of the conversation of just how much do you value opportunity and bad offense or bad team. And I think you and I would both side on this. We would take the argument of, yes, it's bad offense, but opportunity is opportunity. And when you get to this point in the season, beggars can't really be choosers at this point. You have to kind of take the opportunities as they come. And we do have teams on bye in week 14. It's specifically like what comes to mind right away, the Patriots, right? So it really stinks. But like the season is not over just because just because a guy is on a bad offense does not mean that they can't or shouldn't be rostered, or to nullify then the argument that there's an opportunity for them to start producing in fantasy. We understand that Devin Neal and Chris Rodriguez probably aren't going to be league winners. We completely understand that. But going from pretty much non-rosterable to, hey, you know what? Maybe I can throw them in as my running back 2 this week just because of the opportunity that they have. That has to matter at some point. That has to mean something. So again, fully understanding that like these aren't the sexiest names. Again, these are hidden gems. But like Chris Rodriguez, again, this backfield is shifting over to him, and there's an opportunity now that, hey, you know what? To have him as a nice little depth piece as we get into the playoff push, like, I'm not going to lie. Like, if you're a contending team, right, and you're kind of staring down like the Tyler Algier or Chris Rodriguez, and like then we get into the roster discussion of like, right, should you have the handcuffs on your teams or whatnot? But like, you're looking at the Devin Singletaries of the world. You're looking at the Bam Knights of the world. You're looking at, gosh, who's another one? The Dylan Sampsons of the world, the Ollie Gordons. Like, if you were rostering those guys over a guy like Chris Rodriguez, that makes that I don't think that is good roster strategy at all, because again, the opportunity that Chris Rodriguez has is not the same as those guys have. So yes, it's not a league winner. We fully understand that, but there's value here in an opportunity that Chris Rodriguez has.
Definitely. And it's, again, guys, like if you had a J.K. Dobbins get hurt, Rashad White, who's completely lost his job, Zach Charbonnet, who's losing his job pretty quickly, Jordan Mason's not getting much, Tony Pollard's not getting it, like guys like that, I'm willing to start Chris Rodriguez over them moving forward, especially with his schedule. Well, that wraps it up for us today. We have our starts and sits coming for you tomorrow. And again, it's a short week this week because it's Thanksgiving on Thursday, which means you get football all day long and you get it on Friday. So, what a week we have coming up for us. Make sure you're following us on the socials. I'm at Cameron FFF on the X, at Tyler_Plath for Tyler. FFL is on the X for the Fellas page. The FFL is on Instagram, Fantasy Football Fellas on Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok, and Fantasy Football Fellas Shorts on YouTube Shorts. Make sure you subscribe, hit those notifications, and we will see you tomorrow. Deuces.
Deuces.